Welcome back everyone. Hi, if you're new, I'm Tori, and today I want to share with you all the books I read in February. To be honest, I'm a little underwhelmed by the month as a whole. I do have a book in here that I loved. I'm sure you guys know what that is. But otherwise, everything was either fine or didn't like it at all. I do have one DNF in here, my first DNF of 2023. Which I don't think is going to be that big of a surprise if you saw my last recent updates video. Not to sound, too overly negative about the month, because I do have books in here that I did enjoy, but I feel like they're just that, like books I thought were good, but I don't have any strong feelings, like strong positive feelings, strong negative feelings. They were just good. So we're gonna get into all of it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope for myself that March is a little bit better. But yeah, let's get into it. Let's kick things off with some books I did enjoy. First, we have Sword of Destiny by Andrzej Sapkowski and Blood of Elves. And so this is the second short story collection in the Witcher series, and then finally book one. I liked Sword of Destiny. I thought it was a solid short story collection. Nothing to really rave about. Kind of the common thread throughout the stories in this book is Yennefer, so I really enjoyed that, and just getting to see her a little bit more in action in Sword of Destiny, and overall thought it was solid. But then I got right into Blood of Elves, and this is really where I had such a great time. This is the true start to the Witcher series, and we're getting a lot more of Ciri and Geralt and Yennefer in this book, which I loved so much. In this book, we start to learn a lot more about Ciri and just really how important, how powerful she is. And Geralt, when he starts realizing that as well, that's when he puts her under the kind of Yennefer's tutoring. We just get some really great scenes between Ciri and Yennefer in this book, and just the way that they bounce dialogue off of each other. We see their relationship growing a little bit in this book. For me, I really love the contrast between Yennefer and Triss in this book, and in the way that they treat Ciri. I feel like Triss is more of this very like coddling, like, oh, don't hurt the baby kind of figure. But then on the other hand, we have Yennefer, who is just no nonsense. She treats Ciri, not treats her like an adult, but she is just straight up with her. The conversations that they have are very raw and honest and open. And yes, she doesn't baby her, but she still has that kind of like tough love, maternal figure. And I loved it so much. So I really love seeing the relationship grow, and just story wise, where the trajectory of the story is going. I think I'm really going to enjoy that as the series continues. So I am going to be skipping March though. I'm not going to go straight into Time of Contempt, because as you're going to see in a few days, my March TBR is just a little bit ridiculous. So Time of Contempt is going to be going into April, but otherwise I'm still excited for this, and I cannot wait to continue on. And then next I read Lone Women by Victor LaValle. This book is out on March 28th, so big thank you to Penguin for the early copy of this. This is true Victor LaValle like storytelling style. This book is extremely layered. He is doing some really interesting things thematically throughout this entire book, and I really enjoyed this, but I still feel like this is one that is going to have to sit with me for a while in order to fully unpack the things that I've read in this. This book is really short, but it is just, it is jammed packed. Victor LaValle, I think, is doing a lot with this, and it's all with this kind of just very smooth and rhythmic prose, which I really loved throughout this book. For comparison's sake, I love The Changeling by Victor LaValle. That is a book that did have to take a little bit of time to grow on me, but where I am right now, I really love that book. Lone Women, I'm not quite there with this one yet. I still love The Changeling a lot more, but I'm really curious to see if Lone Women is going to have that same effect over time, where it is going to like kind of creep up on me and become a book that I just absolutely love. But for right now, I really enjoyed this. This is set in the early 1900s, and we're following our main character Adelaide in this, and we meet her when she is committing this just really wild, really horrific act at the very beginning of the book. And she is fleeing her home in California, and she doesn't have anything with her except this massive steamer trunk that she's been carrying around. And so Adelaide, she takes her steamer trunk with her, and she goes on this journey trying to get to Montana in order to become what's known as one of these lone women and take advantage of this like plot of land that's being offered. And in doing so, she has to maintain the land, keep it up, tame it, and do this for 3 years. And after the 3 years, we have what's known as prove up, where if you have done what you were supposed to do on this land, then the land is officially yours. So that's kind of like the foundation of the story. And so Adelaide, in doing this and trying to survive out in Montana and in these harsh winters, this harsh environment, and just initially being by herself, she has this steamer trunk with her and this really dark secret that lies within the trunk. I think Victor LaValle does such a great job building that mystery and that suspense of what is actually in this trunk and what actually can happen if the trunk is ever opened. I do think though the book takes a little bit of a shift in tone once you do find out what's actually in the trunk. In the second half, we do start to get into a lot of those layers that I mentioned earlier and a lot of the things thematically that Victor LaValle is trying to accomplish in this novel. And it becomes more on Adelaide developing relationships with the other characters who are on the surrounding land. And yeah, we go from there. So I did really enjoy this overall. Again, though, this is going to take a while, I think, to unpack. I think if you're already a fan of Victor LaValle, you are going to enjoy this. So definitely mark your calendar for March 28th when this comes out. This is really dark though. It starts really dark and really brutal. So be aware of that going into this, but overall, this was a great read, and thank you to Penguin for the copy. And then next, I read The Scourge Between Stars by Ness Brown. And this is a novella that's out on, I think, April 4th, I want to say. If I'm wrong, I'll put it up on the screen. So this is a sci-fi horror novella, and it's one that I thought was solid. Like, this is one of the books I was talking about that I don't have strong feelings about, for better or worse. It was very entertaining. This is not something I say too often about novellas because I just respect the fact that they're a novella and they're short. This book, I think, could have been a little bit longer. I think the ending was just a little bit too rushed, but overall this was solid. I think if you are looking for an entertaining horror, if you're a big fan of something like the movie Alien, you will really enjoy this. But in this, we're on this ship that is leaving this failed colony, and we have all these people. Our captain, actually she's more, the back of the book says she is the captain, but she's more like interim captain. But either way, she is responsible for these people on this ship and trying to get them from this failed colony back to Earth. And the ship is really old, so just in trying to escort them safely and trying to keep people alive and healthy, it's a lot of work. And so we see that frustration and we see that anxiety that Jacqueline does have throughout this entire novella with this huge burden placed on her shoulders. And on top of all of this, if trying to keep our people alive wasn't hard enough, now there is this alien threat that is wreaking havoc on the ship. And this novella gets really, it's some action moments, and they get really bloody, really gory, which I was not anticipating it would really go there. Ness Brown really went there. So I was, yeah, that was kind of fun to read. So now you see our main character, Jacqueline, trying to take care of this threat and maneuvering through these like creepy hallways and yeah, just trying to take out these aliens while also trying to keep these people safe. And you know, sometimes things don't always work out. So I thought for what it was, this was a solid read. I had a good time with this. And this is something that I would recommend like around, you know, spooky season coming up. I think this is, this could be entertaining for a lot of people. So if this sounds good, definitely mark your calendars. I'm happy I read this, and thank you to Tor for the early copy. Next, I read Sentient by Jeff Lemire, and I think the illustrator is Gabriel Walta. When I finished this graphic novel, I don't know what it was, but I was on like some kind of reading high. I was like, this is amazing, like this is the best graphic novel, like I cannot wait to tell everybody about this. And then maybe about 30 minutes later I was like, yeah, that was okay. Like the come down was so quick. It was just like a full 180. I don't know what happened, but I think just once it settled and once I just kind of got over just the excitement of reading this book, I was like, yeah, it wasn't amazing, but it was good. At the beginning of this graphic novel, so we're on the ship, and at the beginning, all of the adults on this ship, like the captain, just the engineers, everybody who needs to be alive in order to keep the ship running, they are quickly taken out of the picture. And I was not anticipating that. And honestly, that's not even a spoiler. It's in the synopsis, like it's on the back of the book. I genuinely have no idea how I missed the biggest part of the synopsis, but when I was reading it, I was genuinely like, oh my God, like what is going on in this story? But that's part of like what you need to know up front. The adults are quickly removed from the situation. And so now we are left with all of these children who are parentless and on this ship that's just moving through space, trying to get to their destination planet. And they're so young and initially helpless, but the AI of the ship begins to look after these children and treat them like they're her kids. The concept is really cool, and the artwork throughout the story is incredible. It's so vivid. So big props to Gabriel Walta for the illustrations in this. It's really great. And so we're seeing the kids get into some really sticky situations, trying to keep the ship afloat, and just when they dock at certain places, you see them get into a bit of trouble. And the AI just comes through and she's like, no, these are my children. I need to protect them. And the concept, again, is just really amazing to read. And so I love the experience of that. Yeah, and I think if this sounds interesting, it'll be a good read for you guys. But at the end, I was just like, whoa, like mind blown. Like, this is so incredible. And it wore off very, very quickly. So again, it was good. I enjoyed it, but definitely not like this reading high that I was on exactly when I finished it. So, and then I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I finished The Tyranny of Faith by Richard Swan. This is book 2 in the Empire of the Wolf trilogy. I have a full review of this already, completely spoiler free, so I will leave it linked somewhere for you to go check that out. Highly recommended, by the way, because I'm not going to spend too much time on it here. But I love this. I loved it. I thought this was such a strong sequel. I loved seeing our main character, Helena, keep growing as a character. I loved seeing Von Vault through her eyes, and just story-wise where this book is going, I think it's huge. This feels so epic, and we're getting more into like the magic side of things in this book, and you know, the law versus religion, and just it is such a good time. So I love this. I absolutely cannot wait for book 3. But again, if you want to see my full in-depth thoughts on this book, definitely go check out the review. But this was the standout. Tyranny of Faith, this was the best book I read in February. I loved it. Definitely the peak of my reading month for me. And it was at the beginning of the month. So now let's get into books that I really did not like in February. The first is Breaking Day by Adam Oyebanji. This is actually the first book I read in 2023 that I did not like. So up until this point, the reading year, like all of January and you know, through the middle of February, everything was going perfectly fine. And I was so excited for this book. And here we are. So this is an adult sci-fi novel. At least it's marketed as an adult sci-fi novel. That's probably one of my like first issues with the book. This reads a little bit too young for me personally, and a book that's supposed to be adult. Because I still, you know, I can read middle grade, and I still have some young adult books on my TBR, things like that. So I'm not talking about like, oh, I just can't stand young sounding characters and angsty, blah, blah, blah. Guys, I'm reading Bloodmarked right now, and it's fantastic. So that's not what I mean. But in a book that I'm thinking is an adult sci-fi, just some of the situations that we get into, some of the characters, some of the conversations, they're just a little bit too young, a little bit too cringy, a little bit too quirky, cheesy. I don't know. I wasn't on board with a lot of those moments, a lot of the character moments. It wasn't for me. But plot wise, we are on this generational ship, and they've been on this ship for many generations at this point. But they're preparing finally to, you know, they're getting close to their destination planet, and getting closer to the process of breaking day when they enter that kind of like the gravity of that planet. And our main character, Ravi, he is this young engineer in training, and the closer that they start getting to breaking day and going through with the procedures for breaking day, Ravi starts seeing this young woman, or this girl, just appearing throughout the ship. The first time he sees her outside of the ship, and she doesn't have on a spacesuit, no helmet, and he's like, whoa, that's so weird, like, who is this person? And then, you know, from there, she just kind of keeps popping up in random places, and Ravi doesn't really know what to make of this. And so that's kind of my second issue with this book. That little element of the story is dragged on so long, and it's not even that, yes, okay, I understand that you have to sustain the suspense, sustain the mystery, but it almost like, it pops up very randomly. Like, you know, Ravi will see this girl at one point, and he'll say, oh, that's so weird, like, I wonder where she came from, and then completely forget about it. And then as the reader, like, I forgot about it, you know, but then all of this time will go by, we see Ravi in training, we're getting all these like cringy conversations and this angsty little crush that Ravi has on this girl. And we're getting all of that. And by that time, you've already forgotten that this like weird girl is popping up everywhere. And so we're getting all of that and you kind of forget. And then she'll like pop up behind Ravi again. And you're like, whoa, like, oh, okay. I guess that is what this story is about. And then we get a little bit more into the mystery and then we forget about it again. And I just thought it was just this really odd pacing, this really odd like stop and start, and here's the mystery, and oh, but forget about that, here's what else is going on the ship right now, and oh, there's the girl again. And that just on top of the things that I already didn't like about this book. I was so over this book by like the midway point, and I was thinking to myself, how are there still 100 pages left in this book? Unfortunately, I didn't enjoy this like really at all. Just tonally it felt very off, and it's not funny necessarily, but just the tone of it feels very almost light and just kind of nonchalant on top of like the things that are happening in the story. If this sounds interesting, you know, don't let me deter you, please. Like, just still give it a try for yourself. If this is on your TBR, don't, you know, knock it off or anything like that. Just give it a chance, see what happens. You might enjoy it. But for me, I didn't like that. Now let's get into another book, surprisingly, that by the end of it, I did not like. And I feel like I want to rant about this book a little bit. And that's Promise of Blood by Brian McClellan. Oh my God. I don't even know where to start with this. I was enjoying this. I was enjoying the atmosphere. I was really enjoying getting to know more about the magic, the powder mages, the privileged, and just I was really hooked. But by the end of this book, I was so frustrated by these characters. To me, these characters are so bland. They're so bland. And by the end of this book, I couldn't care less about a single one of them. Even the female character who was the mute in here, who was probably the most interesting out of everybody in the story, by the end, I was like, I don't care about her either. And I think what was initially keeping me from noticing how much I didn't care about these characters was initially the magic and the world building that was happening, because I was so focused on that. But then once I got in the swing of it and once I felt comfortable in this world, I was like, these characters, it's like watching paint dry. For me, I just felt like there was no personality with some of the, actually all of these characters, no personality. And the things that happened at the end of Promise of Blood, I mean, it was pretty big. Like, it sets up book 2 perfectly. But for me not to have a desire to read the second book after, I think that says something. It's a lot of characters in this, but we kind of have like 3 core main characters who were circling through in this book. It's interesting because one of them, he is like an investigator, and he was the perspective that I was not really into in the first half of this book. And then by the second, I was like, well, he has the most interesting storyline going on. But we have our other main character who we're following, Tennille, who's the son of the Field Marshal Tomas, who is like, you know, the main character. Every time, Tennille was somewhat interesting in the beginning of the book, but every time in the second half of this book, when it would cut and we would be back with Tennille, oh my God, I was almost bored to tears. My frustration now is coming out a little bit more now that I'm actually talking about it out loud. But yeah, this was not, I really don't like these characters. Just so boring. So boring. The atmosphere, the plot, and the magic is what really hooked me in the beginning, but the characters just kind of squandered all of it. The whole plot of this book is we have our main character, Field Marshal Tomas, and we start the book with a coup. That's not a spoiler. Like, we start with a coup. He is bringing down the current age of kings. And so we start in the middle of that action, and the book kind of builds out from there. Like, we start with this revolution, and now it's like, you know, where do we go from here? How do we keep the people in the country stable? You know, there's still the threat of war happening. And we're kind of getting all of that spiraling out from that one moment that happens at the very beginning of the book, like chapter 1. And this sounds like a little bit more harsh than I actually feel, but I don't know how else to say it. I feel like these characters, the way that they're written, are not strong enough to keep that interesting, to keep that plot interesting for 545 pages. And the other thing that just really irritated me in this book, and normally this is something that I don't even comment on because I read a lot of fantasy, I just kind of roll my eyes and keep it pushing because it doesn't bother me. But in this, it's so noticeable. The female characters in this are so tired. Like, at this point, the way that they're written, I would just rather they not be in the story at all. Oh, I didn't like this. Even though I am mildly curious about where the story is gonna go, just, you know, plot wise, I don't think I can bring myself to read the second book. That's unfortunate. I think that's probably the biggest surprise for me, at least, because that started off really strong and look where we ended. And then finally, the last book I want to talk about is the book that I DNF'd. I don't think this is going to be a surprise. I was not really enjoying this when I talked about it in my recent reads update, and that's Midnight Robber by Nalo Hopkinson. I just mentioned in my recent update that I'm not really into it. Nothing is grabbing me with this story, and I made it a little bit past where I think I left off on like page, I don't know, 199. I did read a little bit more past where I had left off in my update video, and even that was just that was just a lot. I was like, I'm not gonna push myself to finish this. I'm not enjoying it. I'm not connecting with these characters. I'm not connecting with the story. I'm 100% fine not knowing where this story ends. But if you guys are unfamiliar, we are following our main character Tan in this. We have a couple of different settings. Kind of the first one is set on this planet called Toussaint, where our main character Tan was born and she was raised, and her father, he is this prominent figure. He's the mayor of this county, and her father commits this horrific crime that gets them, well, actually it gets him exiled, but Tan is forced into exile with him, and they go to this place called New Halfway Tree. And that's when we start to see Nalo Hopkinson bring in some really amazing like Caribbean folklore and mythology. And so I do want to be clear that I loved that aspect of the book, and we get this incredible prose and dialect throughout the story that I really was enjoying. So I liked all of that, but again, just something about the story itself and about just following Tan as a character, I wasn't the biggest fan of. And again, I do want to mention that if you all are interested in picking up this book, definitely check the content warnings. I mentioned before that it was pretty heavy, and for me, you know, I read a lot of dark books, a lot of heavy books, so the things that happened to Tan in the story and just kind of the horrific nature of the abuse that we see in the story, it wasn't the deciding factor for me to DNF, even though it was definitely a little bit hard to read. The deciding factor was the fact that I just wasn't enjoying it anymore. So I am going to put this down, and I don't think it's a soft DNF. I think this is going to be a permanent DNF. So that is it for me, you guys. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Let me know down in the comments if you have read any of these, or just let me know how the month of February went for you overall in terms of your reading. And if you want to, let me know what's on your TBR for March. And I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.